Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm Sarah Vantine here with Ted Ings. Today we have Joel Furno, founder and CEO of Citrin Automotive. And Ted, hospitality has been top of mind for a lot of conversations in the industry today.
Sarah, you're so right. Hospitality is the word. Today we have Joel Furno. Joel, the expert working with dealers all across this country. Joel, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Hey, Ted, Sarah, thank you for having me.
Great to
Well,
have you here. We had a great conversation on the last event, Sarah, with Ed Roberts, and I'm eager to learn more about the work that Joel is doing with dealerships.
absolutely, Ted. And with that, Joel, to kick things off, I just want to talk a little bit about what's changed across automotive. We've seen a lot happen in the last 5, 6 years, but from your perspective, what's changed in dealership economics that makes service execution more critical today?
Yeah, I think everyone's experienced some margin compression due to interest rates and customer expectations being even higher than they ever have been before. Additional services being required of the dealer, from pickup drop-off services to more loaner cars, more customers coming through the service drive, and just a higher emphasis on needing to execute at a very high level. Um, I think a strong fixed ops department, a strong used car business will pull a dealer through any economic challenge, but it requires a lot to execute that at a high level.
Joel, you're so right. And there's so much writing, especially on the early parts of the service process and the final parts. Where do you see service departments consistently breaking down across the industry from your vantage point?
Yeah, I think it's one thing even difficult to find great folks to answer phones and make sure that the phones are being answered on time. I know AI is addressing that in certain ways, and then so it's one thing to get the customer to the dealership, and then I think what's the experience like when they arrive? Is the service drive backed up to the road, or is it empty and nobody speaks to a customer because all the service advisors are busy on phones or talking with other customers? That initial first impression, I think, is a big one. And then how do we end the service experience after a customer spends $1,000 at the dealership? Are they handed their keys and asked to go get their car themselves, or is the car pulled back onto the service drive? We come from a hospitality background. Those little details of that first and last impression are really important. But with all the other priorities inside the dealership, we see a lot of those opportunities get missed.
Well, and Joel, you touched on the word that I think is really important again to this entire conversation and really at the heart of what Citrin does. Hospitality, we're thinking about all the different ways that customers, are interacting with so many different personnel at the dealership during, as you mentioned, during that service visit. And, despite the fact that a lot of dealerships do have strong leadership and great cultures, their same problems continue to persist. And we still see customers having fractured or dismissive experiences. So, why do you see, the same problems persist, even though these dealerships have strong leadership?
Yeah, great question. I think the root of the issue starts with the fact that there's a lot of pressure on managing unapplied labor expenses, right? The hourly support staff that aren't viewed as revenue producers. So I see a lot of dealers skimp on their support staff, and they view the car mover as a porter. I really view them as a valet, as a greeter, as the first and last impression of the dealership. But because of the span of control that service managers have, they don't have time to interview 10 or 20 porters and train them properly, aside from just the basics of moving cars back to the shop. So there's really not a frontline defense to make sure that as customers are arriving, as the advisors are already stressed out, and as they're busy juggling the appointments and everything else, we don't see a lot of dealers really investing in the hourly support staff. We actually see dealers cutting the support staff to make their financial statement look better on paper, not recognizing that by not investing in labor to support your revenue producers, there is an inherent cost to that far outweighs, I think, any savings when it comes down to the lower dollars. So I think cost management is certainly important. Dealers are looking for places to cut. I would not advise cutting when it comes to the folks who are directly responsible for the first and last impression that the dealership has, and also supporting the advisors to make sure that they can do their job at a high level and that the lot is organized so the technicians aren't waiting for cars. We see so many issues start with the fact that the hourly support staff is not really a priority inside of car dealers.
And Joel, as a follow-up to Sarah's question, you come from that hospitality industry, so you've got a different perspective. I don't know if you'd mind sharing some of that
Sure.
background because I think that's really important to the conversation.
Yeah, no, so I started Citrin in 2006 out of my bedroom with $200, and we started by doing restaurant and hotel valet parking services. So Herb Citrin actually in 1940 went out to all the restaurants and hotels in LA and became the first valet company and convinced them, said, guys, run your restaurants, run your hotels. Let me deal with the parking attendant. Let me deal with your parking lot. Let me take all the liability associated with that and focus on it so you guys can run great restaurants and hotels. Fast forward 60 years, and nearly every hotel and restaurant uses a third-party valet service. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Automotive has been slow to adopt that. I think back in the earlier days, 10 or 20 years ago, you can get by with a couple of porters to be kind of the catch-all car movers to help out around the shop. But with the increased demands of how many cars are coming through and the heightened expectations on the service department, it's put a lot of pressure on the dealership to do more and do more with less. So we've, 10, 14 years ago, a dealer principal recognized our service levels at his favorite restaurant and asked us to take over his service drive at his Mercedes dealership. And we looked at the service drive as we would a restaurant or hotel. So what's that first impression like? How are we making sure every door is open when the customer arrives? And what's the greeting word track? How do we pass them off to the advisors? How do we make sure the parking lot's organized so that the technicians can find cars quickly and we can pull them up quickly? And we recognized we knew going in we could improve the customer experience, but we didn't realize is how much time we could give back to the advisors and how much less stressful it is to work at a dealership if you have a support team that shows up at 7 a.m. every day, following a standard operating procedure manual, knowing exactly what to do as soon as a customer pulls in, and just streamlines that entire process, both from the customer perspective as well for supporting the entire service operation as the car moves from the service drive to the parking lot, to the shop, to the car wash, and back to the service drive.
And if I recall correctly, Joel, that dealer, I believe in Ohio, is somebody who's been very involved with the Roundtable and referred us to you and vice versa, if you don't mind sharing that. I think that's
Yeah.
a very interesting part of the story.
Yeah, Don Andrews, who was our first fixed ops director that we partnered with, and learned all about CSI and learned all about automotive retail operations, and he learned a lot more about valet parking. And we combined our skill sets and really turned the operation around. They already had a great culture, great people, great family. But these little details, I mean, when you're in a retail environment and you have 50 or 100 customers coming through and you have to keep the machine moving and you have to hit your monthly number and make sure you perform better than the year before, these things that are important but not urgent just get missed. And I know I always say you're not going to keep your lights on by having great porters, but if you really want to optimize your service department, making sure that that's a focus point and somebody at least inside the service department is in charge of leading that team and making sure there's a strong first and last impression, and make sure that there's sound operating practices to as that vehicle navigates its time at the dealership.
And Joel, you've added a new element to the process, service drive acquisition. I think that's really novel and unique. And tell us about that and where typically some of those vehicle acquisition programs typically fall down in a dealership.
Well, with how high interest rates are and how there's margin compression, I understand why it's hard to invest in unapplied labor expense. And so I think general managers are under a lot of pressure to cut costs, given the uncertainty that exists this past year. The service directors know they need the resource, but it's hard for them to ask for more when all the emphasis is on cutting costs right now. So they're having to run their dealership with less personnel and produce better results. So the light bulb moment was, how do we go beyond providing this great service that we know pays for itself? Hard to put that on a spreadsheet. What happens when customers are greeted properly and when there's that strong support team? How do you justify the expense? And so what we've recognized is a lot more dealers are looking at ways they can buy used vehicles from their service drive. And so through some mentoring from Brian Kramer and learning about what he did down in Naples at the Toyota dealership down there, where I remember calling him one day and said, Brian, am I crazy to think that our valets could offer a free appraisal or gently inquire with the customers if they're interested in trading their vehicle in or having a conversation with somebody? And he said, no, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think this is where the process falls down. So we have 6 test pilots now to where we've leveraged our valets to gently inquire as they're checking the customer in, hey, we're short on used vehicles. Would you be interested in talking to a specialist? I think we can get you above market for your vehicle. That's a great opportunity. So a very simple two-line word track to open the conversation. If the customer says yes, we check them in with the advisor so the RO can be opened and that we're not slowing down the process. And we're handing that warm lead over to the sales department. Equity mining is still important. Doing texts before the customer arrives is really important. But having a catch-all that when we greet every single customer, we can guarantee 100% of those customers are being offered an appraisal or offered to have a conversation. We're allowing the service department to function at a high level and for this not to disrupt their process. And we're also taking 100 people and lowering that funnel to maybe 15. So the sales team only has to have 15 conversations versus 100 to get to a 2 or 3% conversion rate of ROs to trade-ins. So being in that space for the last 6 months, there's just a lot that goes into it. You have to have salespeople ready to do appraisals and train. You have to have the right software. You have to have the right follow-up program because not everyone's going to sell their car on the spot, but you're planting a seed for the future. We simply want to fit into be able to help be a catch-all to make sure as customers are greeted. And so with the way gross margins works on used cars, if we can get an extra 4 or 5 cars a month even, we're paying our entire invoice. And there's no longer arguments between the service manager and the GM about adding another person because the service drive is getting backed up. So we hope that this is a path to just help the industry through the current times to be able to justify the expense of having a hospitality focus. And for folks who are going to manage this themselves, I just would encourage everyone to focus on investing in your frontline staff and then using this as an opportunity for them to earn commissions or finder's fee for every appointment that they help secure for the sales team. And you're able to take somebody making $15 or $16 an hour and give them opportunity to earn more income in exchange for providing leads, which helps your employee retention for those roles that are very high turnover. Think in the industry that average turnover is 300 to 400% for hourly porters, and then it feeds you, helps you build your funnel of having conversations in a respectful way that actually enhances the experience. So good so far. It's just we're seeing and respecting all the steps that have to go into a successful vehicle acquisition program. But I think it's one of the biggest unlocked opportunities for dealers right now. It just takes complete dedication that this is going to be a strategic focus for that dealership.
Joel, it's so impressive to hear not only the story of Citrin and how this all got started in hospitality. And again, I mean, this transcends all different OEMs. It transcends all different sizes of dealerships, all different kinds of service drives. And I think the amazing piece that I've noted about what Citrin has been doing is you really tailor all of these intricate processes and these experiences to the dealership environment. But a lot of dealerships, they've had struggles, right? You mentioned a lot of challenges in this type of environment with hiring, with turnover, with training, with just conducting the interviews. So I'd love to get your take. What do these struggles tell us about the underlying service drive environment?
Yeah, I think where I'm seeing the biggest opportunity or challenge is that there's just so many hats that a service manager has to wear that you can't possibly be good at all of them, right? And so the resource constraints around that and having to do more with less and having to just to get through the day the best you can. Technicians are short. Obviously advisors, I think turnover has gone up over the last few years after COVID. So there's just a lot of challenges and I have a lot of empathy for that. It's easy for you all to have experts on and tell them how to do better at parts or do better with warranty. But it's like, where do you even start? Because there's so many things. I would just suggest that they pick one strategic initiative to add, whether it's improving their frontline staff or improving their warranty or whatever it is. Pick one up per quarter or two and challenge your team on those specific priorities. Because again, this is on top of having to run your business every day in a very demanding environment, a retail environment. So I think that is probably the root of a lot of these symptoms is that there is just a large span of control and a lot of demands placed on that role.
We're speaking to Joel Furno. He's the founder and CEO of Citrin Automotive Hospitality, working with many, many dealerships across this country. Joel, going back to some of the elements that you've been sharing with Sarah and myself, talking about inconsistency on the service drive, how does that show up financially for dealers when a dealer is like you said, perhaps more interested in cutting costs and making it look better on the statement.
It doesn't take too many more yeses to additional services to pay for the entire bill. One more yes a day because the customer was greeted when they arrive. I mean, imagine pulling into a dealership and the feeling you have when there's a line back out the door. How many customers leave because they are assuming that because the drive is backed up, it's going to take them an extra hour or two to get their car serviced.
Sure.
Um, Also, think of pulling into a dealership and maybe it's your first time after you bought the car for your first service, and there's nobody there on the service drive. The advisors are inside, and so you're not really sure where to pull in, and it might take you a minute or two before somebody can come out and to even greet you. How much appetite do you have, or what's the feeling like then of that first impression that would lead you to having a good relationship with the dealer and feeling like you're valued as a customer? So I think that just that initial first impression that people have and that feeling that they get already kind of coming in stressed out and unsure what's going to happen or if they're going to be asked to spend more money. But then imagine the difference of pulling in and there's somebody in uniform smiling at you and waving you in, making eye contact with you as soon as you see the service drive. And they wave you in, they show you exactly where to stop. And they walk over to the door and they open your door for you and they welcome you to the dealership. And they help you walk into the dealership and introduce you to your service advisors, or they stand there and talk with you until the service advisor is able to come out after they're finishing up with their other appointment or the phone call they're on. And that little interaction, I think it's really hard to put a spreadsheet number on a spreadsheet, but I think it can not defy too much logic to say that that is going to increase their spending threshold, their willingness to say yes by getting that impression off in the first start. And then from a retention perspective, I think the stats are around 60% of customers won't return to a dealership if they have a bad service experience. And so looking at I think every year over the last 3 years now, more and more customers are moving to independence. Dealerships are losing customers out of their ecosystem.
Mhm.
And so again, there's 10 different steps from how the appointment's scheduled to obviously the experience with the service advisor to obviously more so making sure the vehicle is repaired the first time with the technician. But in between all those lines, what is the experience like when somebody first pulls in the dealership? And then what's the last experience like after they pay their bill? Is their vehicle pulled up on the service drive for them, or are they handed the keys and they have to walk out in the weather, especially up here in the Midwest and the East Coast, to have to walk out to get their car after they paid a bill? How does that make them feel? So I think those are the things that are hard to put in a spreadsheet and put in front of a GM who may not have worked on the service drive before. But all those things go into creating best-in-class service that will enable customers to want to return to the dealership and do more business with the dealership over their lifetime. So I think that's where we really help a lot and where that focus needs to be, regardless of how that part of the business is managed.
Joel, lots of incredible insights and advice that you're sharing with our dealers and our audience today. I would love to pose a lightning round quick question for you because 2026, lots of things are top of mind for dealers as they're looking at, as you mentioned, expenses, as they're looking at hiring, as they're looking at retention, all of these factors. Where should dealers focus first if they want to improve results?
I think it starts with culture. How happy are people working at the dealership? What's the culture like? What's the most what's the biggest pain point for the advisors, for the service manager, for the team that works there? And the dealers who I really see are doing well in this environment are ones who are committed to culture. They're not worried if they have a bad month or two. They're committed to the long-term life cycle of the customer. And to maintain that life cycle, it starts with the team and the culture. And so putting their team first and finding out what their pain points are and making sure they can show up every day with the tools and resources and support needed to do their job, I think is where the industry is growing and evolving into, from a month-to-month business to long-term customer retention culture focused industry.
And Joel, I couldn't help but notice that you walk that talk at Citrin because also you're all about culture with folks who work for you and how you treat them and the opportunities you give those folks. If you want to just take a few final moments to tell us about that, because I think that's equally impressive.
Yeah, I think the idea of servant leadership and putting your people first, similar to automotive and car dealers, we're selling a commodity, right? And why would somebody want to come work for our company and go park cars and greet customers and wash cars at a car dealership? Why would anyone want to be a service advisor or a technician and stay at that dealership versus all the other dealerships they could go to? Why would anyone want to buy a car from your dealership versus anyone else's? And it all starts with pouring into our people and making sure that we're hiring people who aren't just high performers, but who are high integrity and match your culture, not just can hit a number or sell X number of units, but actually fit the mold of your culture. And then what's their working experience like? One thing that's been really important to us is we have around 800 hourly team members who are working inside car dealers. I've met so many amazing service directors and GMs and principals who started off in the dealership, in the industry at the age of 17 or 18 as a car washer or as a parts runner. And now they're providing an unbelievable life for their family. And I think one of the best things and my favorite thing about the automotive industry is every personality type that exists can find a home inside of the ecosystem that exists at car dealerships, from the office to the service department to the sales department. And so we've actually had 150 of our employees last year get hired by our clients at no cost to them for them to become advisors or technicians. And so the first part of our mission is to create transformative job experiences for our team that lifts them up and helps them find a career path. And we believe that by doing that, we can then provide extraordinary services to our clients and have long-term partnerships that allows our business to flourish. So all we have is the 18 to 24-year-old who shows up in his uniform and ready to greet customers and work hard in the service department. So we've reverse engineered, how do we make sure we serve that as our first customer and make sure that that person's taken care of and has a great experience? And for us, our playbook is very simple. We have to advertise all the benefits that come from working at our company, why somebody should pick us. So it's really a sales process. We make sure they have flexible scheduling around their school schedules, which gives us access to higher tier talent that's out there. And then finally showing them a career path to eventually work for the car dealer and our partner or grow with our company into a management position. And so I think if we want to create great customer experience, it starts with the employee experience and what's their experience like through their onboarding, through their training, through the time. It's already stressful enough to work inside a car dealership with all the customers and all the demands. You can't make it more stressful internally, right? And so making their environment better. One other piece of advice I'll offer is we partner with a nonprofit called Marketplace Chaplains. For $7 per employee per month, we have a care partner who's a trained chaplain, simply going in person once a week to ask our people a very simple question. How are you doing? Is there anything in your life that's going on that you need help with? We get quarterly reports, not on details or names, but on topics covered. And it's really given me a lot of empathy and compassion to see what type of issues these folks are dealing with at home. 95% of the issues that are being brought up and talked about aren't work related. They're a sick family member. There's a mental health issue. There's financial pressure. And so, we all have numbers to hit. We all have budgets to hit. We all have to, perform at a very high level and make sure our team's focused and doing their job. But we're also human beings at the same time that have a lot of different things going on behind the scenes. And so how, as an employer, can we invest in resources to really lift up our people? It's not all altruistic. I also believe that by caring more and doing more to serve them, then we're going to get better results out of them and for our clients and for the long-term viability of our business. So I hope those tips on how we've built our culture and the little things that we do. The final one I'll give is we are decentralized. We're in 100 locations over 14 cities. About 6 months ago, we launched a program to where every month our executive team, including myself, gets 10 names of our people across our business to call. And we call it just a check-in. And that check-in is simply asking them how they're doing, how they like their job experience, and if there's anything that we can do to support them. And so more so than just picking up nuggets on how to improve our culture, the amount of feedback we've gotten on beyond any other gift cards or bonus programs, just the fact that they have executives calling them to ask them how they're doing has made a pretty huge impact. And so I think for GMs, walking through your shop once a week and shaking the hands of your technicians and saying, thanks. I know it's scary back there. I know you haven't spent much time if you came up from the sales side of the business, but go back there once a week, pop your head into orientations, welcome people to your dealership and break those walls down. It's scary for me to walk into a GM's office, let alone, a new employee inside the car dealership. So those little things, I think we get way too complicated when we think about employee retention and culture. And we have to show people that we sincerely care about them and their well-being and take action against that.
Joel Furno, it's all about the people and the culture. to our audience, if you want to elevate your game in 2026 and learn more about a world-class service experience, reach out to Joel Furno, again, founder and CEO at Citrin Automotive, works with a lot of our dealers at the Fixed Ops Roundtable and in Fixed Ops. He's on the web at citrin.co. You see his email scrolling at the bottom. Joel, congratulations to you, and just impressive what you're doing there and the culture and how you're elevating that fixed operations experience. So again, Sarah and I want to congratulate you and look forward to hearing a lot about the success you're having here in 2026 and beyond.
Thanks, Ted. It means a lot. Great being with you both.
Everybody, Joel Furno, founder and CEO at Citrin Automotive Hospitality, citrin.co, here with us today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.